Hong Kong will extend its social distancing measures until the end of the month as it tries to stem a widening coronavirus outbreak in Kowloon. Another 56 infections have been recorded. Nearly all are locally transmitted.
In light of the latest COVID-19 pandemic situation, it is quite obvious that there is no room yet for us to relax the social distancing measures that have been put in place.
Testing is being expanded to try to contain a worsening outbreak in the community. Parts of Kowloon have been designated as zones for mandatory testing. This comes after 31 new cases were linked to clusters at apartments in the district. Residents from more than 70 buildings will have to be screened even if there haven't been confirmed infections in their block. Additionally, more people will be evacuated in Chaiwan after another infection was reported. More than a dozen residents in the building have contracted the virus. And Professor Benny Lim from the Chinese University of Hong Kong joins us live for more on this. Professor, will the extension of measures work, in fact, for Hong Kong? What else is needed?
Well, we'll never know. I mean, Hong Kong has tried both preemptive measures and also reactive measures in the past many months. But there are just new situations every now and then. So I think any further extension of the measure is going to be very detrimental to the affected business. My opinion is that mandatory testing and contact tracing is the way forward. But I think it's not going to be an easy task, for the Hong Kong government, given the lack of trust by some members of the public with regards to privacy.
So what is the rationale behind mandatory testing in Kowloon then? Why not just impose a quarantine?
Well, if you recall, in September last year, the Hong Kong government rolled out a citywide voluntary test, but the response rate was only 25%. So the spike of cases in Yau Ma Tei Jordan area has triggered the mandatory testing imposed on residents and visitors of specific premises last week. And just today, it was reported that a core zone is carved out in both Yau Ma Tei Jordan area and Sam Shui Po area, where everyone within the zone must go for the test. I think it's going to be very difficult to impose a quarantine. I mean, there are prevailing problems of poverty in these carve-out areas. So it's going to be very difficult to stop everyone in that area from continuing with their jobs, especially the ethnic minority groups, who are really in elementary occupation. So I think the bigger problem is the issue of hygiene. We're looking at old tenement buildings, subdivided units, and the fear actually for me now is that even with the mandatory testing, it's not going to be effective in the long run if the living conditions in these areas do not improve.
And with local transmissions still quite high, some experts have called for tighter social distancing measures ahead of Chinese New Year.
Well, Chinese New Year is a very important festival in Hong Kong. And of course, the government has urged people to reduce social interactions during the coming New Year season. So I think even with tighter measures were to roll out in the coming weeks, it has to somewhat relax before the Chinese New Year. Yeah.
Professor Lim, how clear has the messaging been between the government and the people of Hong Kong? Because the government's been repeatedly flip-flopping on its coronavirus measures. Do you think that this has somehow resulted in pandemic fatigue?
Well, the most recent U-turn, as we all know, is the flower market, right? Instead of a complete stoppage of the flower market, the government is now exploring possible measures that so that this annual event could continue. I think pandemic fatigue is really one thing, but I think U-turn actually creates more anxiety to the impacted stakeholders. Moving forward, I think the government needs to really consider the needs of all stakeholders, especially those who will be most impacted. And maybe some of them, they are not even in the front line of receiving these messages. So they have to really think of ways. And when coming up with any extreme measures, that these stakeholders will be taken care of.
Professor Lim, thank you very much for your perspective on this issue. Professor Benny Lim there from the Chinese University of Hong Kong.